listening to Pop This, the podcast where three women talk about pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen, Andrea Gin, and Andrea Warner.
Okay, so I feel like it's been a while since we talked about the Gilmore Girls.
We do it yearly at least.
Yeah. And so I've been doing like kind of a light summer rewatch of season 6 because that's, I kind of intermittently come back and I happen to have ended it on season 6. So I'm watching some episodes from season 6 right now.
You're like, you know what? Let's punish myself.
Yeah, it's also known as the terrible season of Gilmore Girls where she's dating Logan Huntsberger and she drops out of Yale.
Lives in the pool house.
Doesn't talk to Lorelai for 6 months. Lives in the pool house. Joins the DAR.
Didn't Sookie kind of have to leave the show too because her career took off, so she was doing movies, so you didn't even have the Sookie factor?
I mean, she's around a bit still in season 6 and 7,
and Lane was
but
like
not
pregnant
as much.
and no fun and living off...
They made Lane get pregnant like right away. I mean, I don't know if Keiko Agena was like pregnant in real life and they were just stuck with that because she is a tiny woman. So it's possible that like you just, you can't hide that under a bag.
So what we're saying is that you're watching the worst season of the show ever. And
yes. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay. So yes, please.
So I'm at the story part where she is interning at Logan's dad's newspaper. And he kind of gives her this feedback that she's not cut out for journalism, and that causes her to like
spiral,
have a full breakdown.
And then quit Yale and everything. And I remember the first time watching it, like I was really like, that Huntsberger guy is really awful. Why is this happening to Rory? Like what is she doing? And, just like, really empathizing with like Lorelai's point of view on the whole situation. And I'm finding that watching it now that, like I have some bunch of years of experience in the media industry under my belt, I'm watching it and I'm like, maybe Rory wasn't cut out to be a journalist based on her performance. Because she, like at the newspaper, if you rewatch it now, she's kind of like not like she isn't sort of active. Like she isn't pitching ideas. She doesn't seem like she seems to be wanting to organize things and make sure office things run smoothly. But she doesn't seem to be getting out there and trying to get stories or trying to like, get her byline in the paper and stuff. And yeah, just rewatching it now, I feel like maybe she wasn't cut out to be a journalist. And I'm just wondering, do you think that the writers in season 6 intentionally made her seem like she wasn't cut out to be a journalist? And, people were just kind of wrapped up in just believing Rory could do anything that they didn't see it? Or do you think that... do you still deeply empathize with like Lorelai's point of view and think that Rory should have become a newspaper person and clearly had the skills to do so and the, will to do so?
Well, I mean, I think at 20, no one has the skills to do almost anything for the most part. So, I mean, I'm gonna like put that there. I also think we have all, unfortunately, worked in an industry that normalizes brutality and abusive white men, straight white men. So,
Andrea, I think I know who one of them might be that you're talking about right now. I'll send you a mental image. Thank you.
Ding. So I just like, so there's that. I do think that she is written as mildly incompetent increasingly as the series goes on. Like we are no longer shown her brilliance and her competency. We are just told about it because I think I think that they didn't know how to write a competent young woman character and still have like the ability to generate conflict around that. Because like the Rory that we start out with is not the Rory that we end with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you just watch her in season 6 and it's just, maybe she should sort of look into other careers.
Maybe she shouldn't have gone to Yale. She should have like hopped on a motorcycle across the U.S. with Jess. That probably would have been a more interesting season. Thank you. Plus, you get to look at Jess.
Maybe she should have done anything that does not involve men, because her taste in men is not great.
But of all the bad, like,
you know
Jess
what I mean?
is
Like,
the best one.
I mean, sure, but like he's also kind of terrible. He actually literally, I mean, again, because I'm constantly like, I'll go 6 months without watching anything of Gilmore Girls, and then I'm constantly in a mild rewatch. And so I recently watched the episode in season 4 where Jess is like, oh, well, I did things that you were interested in before I got you. And now that I have you, I don't need to.
I'm not saying he's great. I'm just saying.
No, I know. He's much more attractive than any of the other options.
Much more attractive.
For sure.
And in the end, doesn't he end up sort of being like a publisher of like, whatever new beat poetry or whatever?
He gets his stuff together.
But he kind of gets the career.
Yeah. He's not a nepotism baby like Logan.
He gets the type of career that Rory would have kind of wanted, but like the cool version of that career. And maybe the whole journalism thing didn't work out for her because she's been coddled her entire life. And it's hard to be a journalist if you don't know what the real world is like. Right? If you don't know how to look for scandal and problems and you're always glossing them over, maybe journalism isn't the career for you. She could.
Well, and also we never like really, I think it's like this idealized version of journalism that Rory wants to do. Like she says, Christiane Amanpour is like the go-to. And that's like the cool, like in the same way that like she gets made fun of in season 3 for like wanting to write a paper about Hillary Rodham Clinton and how like, they're like, this is the most basic thing. Like if I get one more paper about Hillary Rodham Clinton being like, the shining example of like the future of women, I'm gonna die. And she's like, oh my god, I'm unoriginal. Yeah. Like you are, because you're like not, but like that is a problem with Rory. But it's also just because I actually think like as much as some of the writing is really brilliant in Gilmore Girls, some of it is deeply not. And I'm gonna go back to what I've often said: just because you're married to a person who's also a writer doesn't mean they should get to co-write your show with you.
Yes, I would agree.
I don't think Daniel Palladino should have had any ability to touch that
I think
show.
that one of Rory's problems is the fact that she was literally raised by a manic panic pixie dream girl before
Pixie Dream Girl
technically had a name for them. She was the Pixie Dream Girl was Lorelai Gilmore. And it can't be easy, even with the mom having the best of intentions. It cannot be easy to be raised by such an incredibly large personality, I guess is a nice way to put it.
That's such a generous description of Lorelai Gilmore. I've been in therapy
talking about my own family this week, so I've got some leftover words.
I like it. No, I like it because, like, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, Richard and Emily are also both significant personalities as well. So, a lot of family legacy stuff there that you probably identify with deeply,
Emily
and
Gilmore,
so do I.
And my grandmother, my aunt, my mother are pretty, and my grandmother on the other side, same people. And my grandmother on the other side was indeed a DAR. So, yeah. I used to actually watch the show going, oh, it's like More Mother's still alive. Oh, you had to call her More Mother because she was more than your mother. It was never grandmother. It was more mother.
Oh my god. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
She was...
AG, I'm looking forward to you progressing through season 6 because, so what episode are you on right now?
I'm around this spot where like, Luke and Lorelai have decided to get married and Luke's kind of being shamed by Kirk because he didn't propose.
Yeah, toxic masculinity. Yeah. From Kirk, of all people.
I know. And they're dealing with the Twickham House situation.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, you know what? Season 6 does some way harsher stuff, I gotta say. So buckle in, because this is...
Yeah, it's the season in which I'm like, I don't... Like, Lorelai seems really...
self-absorbed and kind of mean?
Self-absorbed, making everything about her and kind of mean. And Rory
seems
doesn't...
rootless, aimless, and not nearly as perfect as she was as a young teen?
Yeah, and like you kind of think, oh yeah, like the grandparents probably do have a point. Like she probably could use some time off to figure out what she wants to do.
Well, when Emily Gilmore though becomes the white knight in the story, that's I mean, maybe that's the whole point of it, is that it was all an illusion up until it's sort of like that episode of Dallas where where it was dreamt, the whole season was dreamt. Maybe all 5 seasons before that were just a dream. And this is the real Gilmore Girls. This is the dirty, messy. This is like the real world where people, once the cameras are on and the people become real. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, Rory gets like an influx of competence later in the season, so not to spoil anything for you, AG. But it still feels like nobody on this show has ever read a newspaper, let alone worked in a newspaper office. Like, and I say that as someone who honestly, like, I mean, I've worked in like an arts and culture kind of paper, like with Steven, but I've never really worked in like a newspaper, and even I am like, well, this is ridiculous.
Well, I just like when you connected with A Year in the Life and the fact that she isn't really succeeding in her journalism career, it just makes you, when you watch these kind of scenes of her like early kind of rejection from the newspaper industry, it makes you think like, oh, is there some kind of like long game going on here where it was like, yeah, Rory was never meant to be a journalist. And I don't know.
I mean, it is fitting, I suppose, that, and I haven't rewatched A Year in the Life.
I don't think we ever.
I don't know
no
that I ever will, but I probably, yeah. I mean, I think it really ruined me on a lot of levels. But I remember from watching it is that she ends up taking over the Stars Hollow paper.
Oh Lord, I've forgotten that.
And in combination with the fact that she takes over the Stars Hollow paper and her final words are, "Mom, I'm pregnant."
And she's back in Stars Hollow.
Yeah. I guess the messaging is history repeats itself and we're never too far from where we started. And you can either take comfort in that, or you can just shake with the cold shiver of the future sitting in your face, looking into your mother's eyes.
Lead, I will follow.
Perfect, Steven. That was perfect. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Andrea Gin.
And I'm Steven Schelling.
Yay! We did it. And you're listening to Pop This. And yes, Steven Schelling is returned. So Yay. Nice to see you. Thank you so much. Our dear Lisa Christiansen is on holiday. And
who else are we going to call to do a musical?
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, Steven, I feel like we just owe you, I don't know, just hours of your life back. But you know what? This is one that, like, I feel like I'm just so glad you're with us to talk about this.
I am so excited. And also, those hours I could get back, I would have just spent them watching other musicals, not necessarily the ones you wanted me to. So, I mean, I was watching Grease last night and totally had a brain flash about another musical altogether that has nothing to do with Grease, but we'll get to that. But still, it was just like, that's my life. My life is musicals, therapy, and I don't know, eating and walking the dog. So
honestly,
so
what a great life.
I'm putting
all
the things together and using my skill set right here, right now.
Yeah, people have said this podcast absolutely helps them walk their dog and do therapy. They love to eat while listening to us, and musicals.
There you go. I'm just checking off the list as we go down.
I love it. I'm going to read a very quick short bio here. Steven Schelling is a writer, fashion stylist, PR executive, professional gadabout, and our resident expert on musicals.
I figured everybody knows who Steven is by now because he's been a co-host on our podcast so many times.
Yeah, if there's anything you'd like to add to your bio, Steven.
Not particularly, no. There's not much there. I enjoy sleeping. I found that out recently. I really enjoy sleeping.
Cool.
Yes, that's my new thing.
That's great. I'm really excited that we're talking about Grease, though. Like, I have wanted to do an episode about Grease for a long time. I am sad that our, sort of like our impetus to do an episode about Grease obviously is the passing of Olivia Newton-John, who, I mean, just what a sweet angel. I just love her so much. And in rewatching the movie, I'm reminded of just like how good she is. Like, I know that the movie kind of belongs to like John Travolta, and I get that, and like that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, his charisma is like just a rocket through his pants. Like, we get it. But she's so great. And when she did the turn at the end of the film to like wave, I got a little teary. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I felt a little emotional.
Yeah.
I bet you that every obituary writer, though, like at the New York Times and everywhere in the world, because, they write these in advance, that screen cap from the end of Grease has been in the file folders since 1978, right? So, like, they knew they were going to use that picture. It's the absolute perfect picture.
It's absolutely perfect, yeah. I'm going to I can read the little background here. It's a long background, but I'll just skate through it.
There's a lot to say about Grease.
No, for sure. Grease is a 1978 American musical romantic comedy film based on the 1971 musical of the same name by Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey. It was written by Bronte Woodward with an adaptation by Alan Carr and directed by Randall Kleiser in his theatrical feature film debut. It's interesting that that's his debut. I think he actually did a pretty good job. The film stars John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John as Danny and Sandy. Grease became the highest grossing musical film ever at the time. Its soundtrack album ended 1978 as the second best-selling album of the year in the U.S., behind the soundtrack of the 1977 blockbuster Saturday Night Fever, which also starred Travolta. What a double year for him. It also earned an Oscar nomination for Hopelessly Devoted to You at the 51st Academy Awards. And the film remained the highest grossing movie musical of all time until Mamma Mia in 2008. But Grease still bested domestically $188 million to $144 million. Worldwide, Grease has grossed $400 million on its budget of $6 million.
Wow.
Sweet Jiminy Bucks, that's a lot. And more than 123,000 different productions of the stage musical have been mounted around the world since its inception. I would like to say, for the record, I saw the touring production that came to Vancouver when I was like 14 or 15 or 16 that starred Debbie Gibson.
Ooh. I saw the mid-1990s Broadway version because I had a friend in town who insisted, and I was like, I'm a real actor, well, we're not going to Greece. And then she was like, no, we're going to Greece. So I went to Greece, and I cannot remember whether, I think Kanicki was actually in the show, but he was playing like the coach. Because it was the era of stunt casting, and I think it was supposed to be Brooke Shields as Rizzo, but she was sick. So we just got the stand-in.
No.
But and they announce it over the speakers before the show starts, like, tonight the part of Rizzo will not be played by Brooke Shields, and the whole audience went, oh. Yeah. And then you feel really bad for like
bummer.
Jennifer Smith, who has to get up there and
stand in.
And everybody paid their money to see, Rizzo stunt cast.
Yeah. I heard that Rosie O'Donnell was playing Rizzo at one point.
Cast. And then what I didn't realize, and I only found out because I looked it up, apparently I saw Billy Porter as the teen idol in my version.
Yes!
I did not know that.
Amazing!
So, and Megan Mullally was in it too. And I did not, and at the time I did not know who she. I mean, Will and Grace hadn't happened yet, so.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, incredible.
How is your Debbie Gibson version that you saw?
I don't recall it that well because I was a teenager, but the thing that had really stuck out to me is that it was quite an extravagant gift that my dad gave us for Christmas. He bought tickets both for my sister and I and our two best friends, and all four of us got to go together. And I think it was either at the Queenie or at the Center. I don't remember which one. And I just remember I remember Debbie Gibson being good, but I do also recall being a bit confused about how it felt like there were different songs. Like, I was still too young to know that there are different songs between a film adaptation and a stage show. And I guess I also didn't fully understand that the stage show had predated the film adaptation.
Right.
So you know, there was that.
Yeah, that would have been a letdown.
I see.
And plus, you're expecting Hopelessly Devoted because it was on everywhere in the late 70s, and it doesn't show up on stage.
And it's the best song.
Yeah, like, well, and I guess, like, also, like, I mean, so I'll just confess, like, watching this last night, I feel like I only ever saw it on TV, and that they ran a shorter version, because there was a whole, like, song that I don't remember ever existing. Like, I don't remember the drive-in song that John Travolta sings at all.
Huh.
And I also don't remember the animated opening that is meant to mimic the credits at a
I
drive-in.
remember that from TV in my youth, so not to age myself, but that was the prime time of my remembering, the beginnings of my memories of watching TV. And it was come on as a Sunday afternoon movie. So, you know, and at first I didn't want to watch it because I'm 8 years old. This looks weird. Like, what is this about? And the music was strange. And then I remember that cartoon specifically. I remember the drive-in scene. I'm trying to think of and then Hopelessly Devoted to You obviously was different. But I think that the TV version has to be significantly shorter because some things have to be cut from the film if you're going to run it on a Sunday afternoon.
For sure. Yeah. And fit in all those commercials and stuff too. Like,
and Grease Lightning specifically wasn't
I guess,
I don't think it was in the stage show, was it? I think it's only in the film.
Grease Lightning apparently is in the stage show, but John Travolta took it from Kenickie.
Right.
Carlos was just reading me this fun fact yesterday. Is apparently John Travolta stole it from Kenickie because he really wanted to perform it and because he had so much power on the production. And Kenickie, the guy who played Kenickie,
Kenickie's car.
That was Kenickie's car, but Kenickie does it on the stage version. He had originated the Kenickie role, and then in the film, that's where he hurt his back and ended up with like that lifetime of
alcohol problem happened.
The drug abuse situation. Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
Yeah.
It totally
but also,
sucks.
I mean, that song, I don't know if the song has the same lyrics in the stage version, maybe. I always find it interesting when high schools want to put on Grease, and I'm like, oh, wow, how are you going to... I mean, there was this... I know that Olivia Newton-John, RIP, rest in power, she had spoken in the early 2000s because some schools were not wanting to perform it because of, misogyny and problems with the script. And she had done the usual sort of, it was a different time. I think people need to look at it that way. And whether she was right or not, who knows? But that it couldn't have, I just can't imagine high schools just putting it on as it is because it's pretty ripe. I mean, the 70s were
No, there's like there's a sanitized version for sure. A lot of high school productions are like Hair, for example. Yeah, obviously it's easier to skip the naked scene. But like but I remember like we put on something I can't remember at our school at one point, and we had to license like the kids version.
Because if I remember, the 70s and late 70s, early 80s were the zenith of like the male ego taking over pop culture, right? It was okay for Brooke Shields to be 13 and a sex symbol, and there was the whole Jodie Foster thing and Taxi Driver. Like it was that had male sexuality or the male gaze had gotten to its utmost point, and it was a musical from that period about a period that everybody was having nostalgia about because it was 20 years before. So it's weird. Like it's sort of like if we made a musical today about the early 2000s, right? It would be the same sort of thing, but we'd be projecting our own times on the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like, where's the Britney shaving her head video? Like a musical. We all need that. The Christina Aguilera Goes Dirty musical. That's the one we need today.
Well, I didn't like, there's so many things because I hadn't watched this film since I was a kid. And then, like I had it was mostly like having the album on vinyl and just playing it over and over and over again with my sister and my cousins and like singing to all the songs and dancing to all the songs. But yeah, like watching it as an adult, like all of those things just went right over my head. Like as a kid, like I had no idea it was quite so, racy,
provocative,
like the provocative dialogue. And yeah, I was a little bit shocked watching it now that like all the dialogue that's in there. And what I also found to be really, just one more thing, but funny is that it's the 70s looking back on the 50s, and you see it in the dance that they do at the hall when like they're all wearing like kind of 50s-esque clothes, except for John Travolta shows up in this like full-on pink shirt.
Yeah.
It's like unbuttoned down.
Like he got it from Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, and he's like doing disco moves on the dance floor.
Yes. Those hips can't quit those moves. Once he learned them for Saturday Night Fever, that's all he could do again. Like, that's just how he moves now. That's, you know what?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
It's like, yeah, like everybody else was doing like the hand jive and he was doing full on Saturday Night Fever moves.
I liked it, I gotta say. So, I mean, this is where I confess that I've always had a mild sexual attraction to John Travolta.
That very first scene where they go, "Hey, Danny," and he turns around. If your heart doesn't fall into your shoe, you're not human.
He's so beautiful.
When he gives that smoldering look at the camera, and you're like, Sandy, why are you holding back? Just do it. Just the whole movie shouldn't even happen. It should be, hey, Sandy, go.
But that's the thing. She wants to do it, but like because of society's expectations of women and like how it's been framed as a sin, like I have a very, watching it now. So when I wanted to do it, like, I don't know, for the podcast, like 5 years ago, I can't remember. AG, I'm pretty sure you were like subject to one of my like outside of work diatribes about like the misogyny and craziness of, anyway, whatever. Right. And I'm sure you were.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. And I was just like, I hate Grease. I want to talk about it and eviscerate it so much. Watching it this time, I had such a different experience of it. Like, I still feel ultimately that it is pretty misogynistic, but I feel like there's so much more that's happening that is an interrogation and a satire of like the sort of stereotypical gender binaries of sexuality, and like it's making so much more fun of what's happening. And I think actually it comes in the big first song where Sandy and Danny have their first duet, and Olivia Newton-John's character, Sandy, takes the low notes in the harmonies, and Danny sings higher than her the entire song. And I feel like that is somehow like the subtle way that we set the sort of like the interrogation of gender from the very beginning of this film. Welcome to my thesis. And
was that Summer Nights? Is that their first duet? Yeah,
Summer Nights is their first one.
I never noticed that. You're right.
It reminded me, something strange reminded me of another musical that has no connection whatsoever, but it was a musical where, when I was watching it again last night, she says one thing, he says the complete opposite. It's his and her version of an event. And it reminded me of Gigi, the 1958 musical, where Maurice Chevalier and Hermione Gingold are singing. They're an old couple, and they remember the first time they met. And, he says it was a sunny day. She says, no, it was raining. And then he sings that, it was in June. She goes, no, it was May. And then there was a tenor singing. She goes, no, he was a baritone. And it reminded me so much of that sort of like that musical trope. And I just don't know where that started. Maybe that Gigi was the first version of that. And then Summer Nights was riffing off of that. I don't know. But again, I just needed to bring that up because my brain is full of musicals. Just full.
I love that. I feel like that would be something that was done probably originally in opera. Like, because that's exactly the kind of like back and forth that they, have, or at least in an operetta. Like maybe trying to think of like
Gilbert and Sullivan.
Going through my brain, I was doing that too
last night.
I can reference
Gilbert and Sullivan going, I don't know.
It's fine. It's gone. But it's Anyway, I think Summer Nights is our entry point to understanding the actual framework for this film, and I really enjoyed just how it plays with our expectations. And I mean, not to jump to the end, but like, one of your questions, AG, is like in the outline was just when Sandy has her makeover at the end, is that an empowering thing, or is that her just like being like, man, I just gotta give in to societal pressure and this is what I want. I don't know that it's like a yes or no to either thing. Like, I think that Sandy admits that she is scared of the things that she desires, And it's her understanding that, like, especially seeing the way Rizzo is shamed for, like, the idea that she is pregnant. And, like, she's not even for sure that she's pregnant. And they resolve it fairly easily at the end by being like, I'm not pregnant. Oh, and you want to get married? Great. It's a real 50s concluation to that.
It's the opposite of a Gilmore Girls ending. Yeah.
It's exactly opposite. But, like, I think Sandy, it's mostly just, like, her deciding that, you know, he has changed for her. He's wearing his Letterman sweater and all he did was run track. It's not like this exact same thing because, of course, it can never be the same thing for a straight man to change for a woman because there's just less that's on the line. His reputation is on the line a little bit, but not really. His answer is like, what are you going to follow a leader your entire lives? And, like, yeah, a bunch of those doorknobs probably are going to follow a leader their entire lives, but, like, that's fine. You know, and so I think that they do change for each other. It just so happens that he very quickly gets to take off his sweater because they have to be in matching black on black for the very slinky dance numbers that go on, where he is just led around by his jaw and her very cute hiney.
I mean, those are some great satin pants that she's poured into. I mean,
honestly, can you imagine?
I think I read that she had to be sewn into them.
I believe it.
And they probably were like an early version of spandex because you couldn't move in just regular satin. Like, there had to be some give somewhere to those, right? So
yeah,
that was, and wasn't it around that time that satin jeans took off? I think it was. I think she actually had a big hand in the fashion movement of satin jeans, satin finished jeans.
I can see that. I mean, she had a big hand in, like, the physical sort of fashion.
Well, yeah, like, that was another thing, you know, to note that, like, she kind of went through a Sandy, like, transformation in her own career when Physical came out in 1981, and she just kind of, like, exploded in popularity with that video where she's wearing leg warmers and a headband and doing aerobics and singing very suggestive lyrics. And then, you know, like, the song was banned on radio stations.
I was gonna say, wasn't it banned? Like,
it was like a number one hit, but it was banned. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it was quite risque for the period, right? So
yeah,
it's like they just hadn't known that Madonna was 4 years away. You know, they just the culture. You had to have Olivia Newton-John in order to get to Madonna, and she doesn't get enough credit for that.
I mean, it's true. She did a big 180 because she was a very wholesome performer prior to the big switch with Physical. I mean, it was a huge departure and it was a big risk to her career, I would think. So, you know, good for her for doing that. I mean, then again, and I going back to that scene that you painted in my mind of them at the fun fair, doing One That I Want and wooing. That is when I was watching that last night. It also that's the moment where I saw, and it's strange because there's all the memes of Sandy when she tilts her head with the cigarette, and you can see her marionette lines, and she even talked about how she felt she was way too old to do this movie. But when you look at the cast, everybody in that movie was like 35. It's insane.
Absolutely,
I couldn't believe it.
At least when we had our Brat Pack in our day in the 80s, they were 25. These people are 35 years old and older. I mean, whew.
But that's like,
I think Stalker Channing was getting Social Security checks at that point.
She was 33 when she played the role.
But I do think it's like kind of classic thing that ends up happening somehow when a Broadway musical there's a film adaptation. Like, even if the people haven't played those characters on Broadway, they end up casting people who are significantly older. Like, thinking about all the people in Rent who ended up playing the characters that they had originated 20 years earlier or however long it was. Like, and that was Rosario Dawson was like the sort of fresh face added to the whole thing. And she wasn't, necessarily that fresh faced at the time. Thinking about the cast of Grease and like, that had originated in 1971 and the movie didn't come out till 78. Like, but even like
I think Barry Bostwick was the original Danny on Broadway.
Barry Bostwick was the original Danny. Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine? But even just like Rocky Horror Picture Show, like, I mean, they want young until they decide they want middle-aged to play sexy teen. And I guess we can be thankful for that.
We could be thankful they cast Sandy.
I don't know.
As Olivia Newton-John as Sandy, because it really did make her career. She was getting along okay-ish before that, but it's what exploded her. And the two of them, John Travolta was at the height of his powers when he did that the first time, when he did that movie. And then he sort of went downhill, and she kept going up. And then by the 80s, she was still vaguely relevant in the mid 80s, and he was already a bad punchline by the mid 80s, and he came back a little bit for Look Who's
Talking. Took until like 90.
and then Pulp Fiction.
Well, and it took. I mean, Look Who's Talking, and then Pulp Fiction. Like he had his renaissance in like the 90s, I guess. But like, I feel like
in this movie though, like you can just see it in his performance that like he knows he's the coolest dude on the planet in this moment in time.
Danny, a version of Danny, a dumber version of Danny on Welcome Back, Kotter for 2 years prior to doing this in Saturday Night Fever. So he's basically made his early career out of playing that guy, right? That was his job, was that hot Italian guy. Which, hey, great work if you can get it.
Honestly, he did a great job with it. Like, I also just really enjoyed their chemistry together, watching them dance together. I also obviously really enjoyed the woman who plays Cha-Cha, and she's such a brilliant dancer, and watching her and John Travolta light up the dance floor together, like that was really thrilling.
Again, very, very disco-y.
Again, a very disco-y performance for sure. I also, because I watched Empty Nest as a child, I have a real special soft spot for Dinah Manoff.
And because I watched Benson as a kid growing up. We had a satellite TV in Europe, and that was one of the shows we could get. And Didi Cohn, who's Frenchie, was on Benson.
Oh,
so
I love Frenchie.
Frenchie's great.
I remember
Frenchie's
her from that,
great.
and I used to have a little crush on her. I thought she was so cool. Like a little baby crush.
She's so cute. And I honestly, like that pink hair, like that's what so many people are doing right now.
She was so ahead of the curve.
Frenchie was way ahead of her time. Way ahead of her time. I also just like, I mean, I'd love to talk about Rizzo a little bit, because I think one of the things that Grease does so well is like it gets a little bit at that sort of like just how the patriarchy has like made it impossible for like good girls and bad girls to coexist without being in conflict with each other, even though Rizzo literally leads a girl gang, and women's friendships seem to be important to her. And she's immediately quite suspicious of Sandy. I mean, obviously I love like a classic like brunette versus blonde conflict, like that's perfect. But as they sort of like make their way towards sort of like just a coexistence, I love so much when we get to the moment where Rizzo it's just before she does her song, and she has like all these other girls have made fun of her, and Sandy checks in with her and just is like very nicely like, are you okay or whatever. And Rizzo's like, I wouldn't tell you if I, and she snaps at her because like that's Rizzo, and she can't do vulnerability at that point. And then she sort of softens and is like, actually, thank you for asking, and it's a tiny moment. But we have these like sort of spots of vulnerability, like when she and Kaneki are in the car, and he basically reveals that this is going to be his first time, because he's like pretended that he's had lots of chicks, as it were, and Rizzo, I don't think it's her first time by any stretch of the imagination, and which I also love. But what I really love is when she's like, can you please call me by my first name? And it was like, it just, again, these like tiny moments that never mattered to me as a child, but like watching them as a grown-up last night was like, this is some really nice little small character moments without a lot of heavy lifting.
Solo pretty much better than any other song from the stage musical, right? And it's the best solo, other than Hopelessly Devoted. I mean, but that was written in later, so it doesn't count.
But yeah, like Rizzo was my favorite character probably in the movie when I was a kid, and it's pretty hilarious, like to think that and not I just saw her as this like sassy girl, you know, like, and
I mean,
just
she
have
was.
not understood any of these other dimensions of her character that are in there.
But you got the main takeaway from her, which is she is sassy. And Sandy's a bit sappy, and like in terms of sort of like one notes, you got the right takeaways. You weren't watching a different movie. You did a great job.
There's also, and I want to know what you guys think of this. It came up because last night I was on IMDb, as I am wont to do, and I was looking up the characters and the actors. Where are they now? What's going on, right? And one of the things I noticed that I'd never noticed before is, now this, we grew up thinking, a lot of people obviously, that this is the quintessential American high school musical movie, right? This is America writ large. And when you look at their last names, they're all Italian and Polish, which is really interesting. So they're probably, first or second generation children of immigrants, right? And I find that really interesting that it became this part of the Americana quilt when it really was, they were, those Italian and Polish people were not exactly welcomed with open arms into America's 1950s America, let's say. So it's interesting that those are the names. And I don't know if it struck you at all, if that seems, or maybe I'm out on a limb.
No, I think that's a really interesting observation. And I think that fits in with what we also sort of see this show wanting to contend with like bigger themes than it pretends to.
Yeah.
It's giving us a surface sort of like sex farce, but what's actually happening are like sort of way bigger things that are going on. And, it's up to all of us, in our pop culture critiques to sort of like either internalize those things or just let them skate over us. And, I think that kind of stuff does like very subtle normalizing work, which is kind of the power of pop culture and why I think pop culture is actually very vital and a reasonable area of study.
For your second.
And validates my existence as a person.
Well, I find it interesting to think about like how American Graffiti came out before this movie.
Jump started that 50s nostalgia.
I don't know, like it's
in 70s.
Yeah, and it's a lot grittier movie. And this kind of like when you look at them, the two in tandem, Grease seems just like this pop culture fun version of what American Graffiti did like 5 years earlier. And just like how these two movies like cemented these ideas of like American like high school stereotypes, like your heart just breaks for poor Eugene through the whole film. Yeah. Like he never catches a break during the whole film. But like he also sets the stereotype that is repeated in film after film after film forever and ever that are about American high school.
By the 70s, this happens in the 50s. By the 70s, Eugene would have been an early tech baron. And come back at the reunion and shame them all a la Romeo and Michelle, right? So...
Right.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, but also like I'm just looking up something about American Graffiti because I have never seen it. I'm sorry, but I know its reference points, or I thought I did. But like, so it was made in 1973, but it's set in 1962, whereas Grease existed on Broadway already in 1971, and it's set in the 50s. So there is a world in which I could imagine.
However, isn't Grease 2 set in 1962?
The writers
I'm
of
sorry,
this,
but we need to get a judgment on this. I believe there's a whole Miss 1962 theme in Grease 2, starring. Yeah.
There could very well be. I can look that up. But what I was just
I never saw
awful.
that.
It's so good.
Oh my God, I've seen it.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. It's truly awful. I kind of love it though. Like I kind of love it. But what I was just gonna say is like I can see a world in which the people like George Lucas, obviously, directed this, and I don't know, written by Willard Huyck, Gloria Katz, and George Lucas. I can see a world in which they saw Grease and decided to write American Graffiti, but like make it a little grittier and set it a couple years later because they wanted to sort of like get into the real harshness of the 60s as opposed to sort of the like slightly more like bleached friendliness of the 50s.
When did Happy Days come on? Because that was also the 50s through the 70s lens, right? And
yeah, Happy Days was also in the 70s, and yes, it was set
American
in the 50s.
Graffiti lead character is the same actor as Happy Days. So Richie Cunningham is American Graffiti's main character.
It's so confusing because you keep waiting for Richie Cunningham to show up in American Graffiti.
Or Fonz to just walk through.
But I just like the... Yeah, like I just like the age range or like the sort of the dates of how like so much changed between even 1958 and 1962. Like if Grease is set in the late 50s, which I think it's probably more set in the mid 50s. I don't know exactly specifically, but there was just just like the culture shock of sort of, you know, America being sort of secretly in Vietnam, but pretending they're not at war, and drafting thousands of young men to go away and serve overseas. I can see how that would cast like this very dark pall over the culture in the early 60s. And I think that makes a lot of sense that like there's this incredible 50s nostalgia, even though of course like the Korean War was going on and stuff. It just wasn't to the same scale at that point of Vietnam. And again, like just sort of still pretending everything is okay. And the 60s is a real time of like, we're going to stop pretending.
Yeah, there's that scene in Hair, right? Where he goes into the army and he's off on a plane and he's never coming home. Right? So
Hair is devastating.
It really is. Yeah,
I hadn't, like when I first saw it, I didn't get it as much. And then I saw a production that was extremely powerful about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And I was like, oh God, I get it. Like this is, yeah, it's amazing.
But Grease is more fun.
Grease is more fun. You're right. And honestly, I do, like, I think about when we saw the Olivia Newton-John roller skating.
Xanadu, yes.
Xanadu.
Which actually, I like the name Olivia Newton-John roller skating movie. That's just as good as Xanadu.
It's better than Xanadu for sure. Oh my God. I'm so glad that we have already done that in the past. And we loved Olivia in that as well, even though the movie is not good. But that we had a chance to spend time with Grease in her absence at this moment, because it really gave me a chance to fully appreciate just like how much harder her job is in Grease than almost anybody else's. Like Sandy is kind of a dull role, right?
Yeah, she's a goody two shoes. Yeah. I mean, I think also for me, and this is in my cohort of friends who are around the same age. I'm not going to say where, but let's just say we were all cognizant when the film came out. So that gives you some idea. And I actually had one friend say, this actually hits a little harder than a lot of the other recent celebrity deaths, because I feel that she was part of my childhood and into my early teens.
Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine just how big a megastar she was in the late 70s and early 80s before Madonna came along. She was everywhere because she was on TV, she was in movies, she had number one hit after number one hit. Even with the bad movies, Magic still did really well internationally. So you were hearing on the radio, you were buying her albums. She was the beginnings of MTV, the very start of MTV with Physical, and she had all these movies. And that was a time when you didn't have 15 platforms to watch 900 shows. You just watched what they gave you. And you were happy with it.
Yeah.
Darn it. You watch the same movie both ways, uphill, right? So, because that's all there was to watch on Sunday. It was either that or football. So, that's what you did. And it felt like to me, I was a little sadder too, because this was something that was really a part of my childhood. Whereas I didn't have, like, Star Wars wasn't my thing. So, when people started going up with Star Wars and and also Star Wars kept sort of continuing, whereas Grease was very much of its time and her career was very much of its time. So and then she'd come back and do cute little cameos for things, or, her daughter was on that, incredibly short-lived but oh so good reality show, Rock the Cradle, where the children of megastars tried to have their own careers, and her daughter won. Chloe Lattanzi won.
Oh my God.
But that's mostly because everybody else's kids were absolutely talentless. So it wasn't much of a competition, but my best friend Derek said if I was talking about Grease today, I had to mention Chloe Lattanzi because we were obsessed with her and that show.
I gotta look that up now.
Yeah,
I
that's incredible.
She did NXS for her big number, like the big finale, and she won with Never Tear Us Apart by NXS. And she also showed like her home life, and Olivia Newton-John was like, "Oh, it's my daughter, la la la, I love her." And then she was out in like the desert in a yurt with her dad, having they had a sweat together in a sweat lodge. It was very strange. But yeah, Chloe Lattanzi, remember that name because very few other people will. So,
well, also like this is like a very weird aside and very casual aside, but like I had to watch the clip of Buffy St. Marie winning her Oscar a lot recently, and Olivia Newton-John is who announces that Buffy won her Oscar, and it's just this little slice of heaven. I love it so much, and it makes me so happy that I've had so much opportunity to spend time listening to her just announce Buffy as like an Oscar winner. It's nice.
Cool. It's cool. And I follow original Wonder Woman, OG Wonder Woman, Linda Carter on Twitter, and they work together a lot because they were both huge international TV megastars at the same time. So they used to put them on stage together, and she'd play Wonder Woman, and Olivia Newton-John would sort of like help her catch, because it was first season of Wonder Woman, so Wonder Woman was always catching Nazis at that point because it was set in the 40s. So like they'd be on award shows and chat shows, and they'd go beat up a Nazi together or something. So that was cute. Yeah,
really,
that's great. That's
and
great.
Olivia Newton-John's grandfather
ran
away from the Nazis. He was a European Jewish man, and he was a scientist, and I think he won a Nobel Prize. So there you go. Let's beat up some Nazis.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't believe we're coming to this point already. So obviously, we love Olivia Newton-John. Olivia Newton-John pops forever. Queen of pops. Does Grease pop?
I think it does. I mean, it's...
Yeah,
I really
think it
do.
does.
And there's no better, second to last song at a wedding
The songs
than
are
Summer
great.
Nights, and having the girls and the boys, and or the wherever configuration you want to have, and having those two sides of the room yell out the lyrics to each other in the verses. There's nothing quite like that.
And keep in mind, Olivia Newton-John's character takes the low harmony.
Mm-hmm. That's
John
that makes it
high.
really hard on a lot of liquored up men to hit those notes.
Sure,
even on their best days, they couldn't hit those early John Travolta notes. They're tough. He had a range. He had a belting range. It was.
He did. Yeah, he did. We love to leave our episodes with something we recommend. Steven, as our guest of honor, would you like to go first?
So your listeners may know this already, but I tend to have a really dark and angry sense of humor. I'm working on that, again, in therapy. But I'm going to go against the grain today because there's a show that just, I discovered it relatively recently, and it just tickles me. And it's called Trying. And it is about a British couple living in London. So already British people, not my thing. But they're lovely. And they're trying to have a child, or they're trying to adopt. Basically, they can't have a child, so they're trying to adopt. Season 3 just dropped. I binged up to what I can recently. I think it's on Apple Plus. And it is just delightful. I mean, it's what I would assume that soccer comedy with Jason Sudeikis is like, that I refuse to watch because people say it's delightful too. Yeah,
Ted Lasso?
I refuse because no. But I think it might be the same type of comedy, but it's got a little bite to it, which is nice. And then I like to watch A Chaser, which is another British show called Breeders with Martin Freeman. And it is about an older couple who are just awful. And it is hilarious as well. So it's all British TV.
Awesome.
Check it out. One's on Apple. The other one, I think, is on Disney. So look for them.
Nice. I mean, if you need an entry point to Ted Lasso, which I'm not saying you do, you can totally abstain from it as long as you wish to, if forever. But I do think the two women who are in the show are right up your alley as characters.
This has been said to me as well. And then apparently one of them is an incredible singer, like a blonde, blue-eyed soul
She's
singer.
An incredible singer. There's also a very attractive few different men who are in it, and one who just swears beautifully and ferociously, and I think you would enjoy him as well.
I'm putting it on the possible list. On the definite, though, if I get COVID or monkeypox, then it goes right up to the top of the list.
Great. Well, fingers crossed. No, I'm kidding. AG, do you want to tell us what you're recommending?
Well, I'm going to continue this like delightful TV train. I've been watching another South Korean TV show on Netflix called The Extraordinary Attorney Woo, which is about an autistic lawyer who's working at a big firm, and she has a really high IQ and she's super talented, but she has like kind of no really low emotional intelligence and bad social skills. And so lawyering is a bit hard because like, you know, she finds it challenging to meet clients and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the storylines are so cute and so amusing. Like on episode 2, she's representing this woman whose wedding dress falls off in front of 1,000 people at her wedding, and she decides to sue the hotel who made her dress.
Amazing.
And yeah, that's sort of the case that she's working on.
That's a fun case.
It's amazing.
I gotta say.
yeah. But yeah, it's really good. Highly
and that's
recommend.
Netflix, you
Awesome.
said?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm totally checking that out.
Yeah.
I am going to continue recommending some different Polaris Music Prize shortlisted albums. Callie McMichael, she is a St. John's based artist. Her album is called Waves, and it's just wonderful. Like, she is a singer-songwriter.
Yeah, it's really good.
There's something about Kelly's voice that really floors me, and I didn't necessarily go in thinking like, oh my God, this is one of the best records of the year, and then like not because of anything. I wasn't expecting to get hit in the face with something so powerful and good, and it's great.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about her, and it was really moving that like she has been working as a professional musician with other artists for a long time, like a decade, and had been kind of like saving up her own material and working on it and honing it and stuff like that. And so this album represents like all of that work. Like some of these songs she wrote like a decade ago, and she's done like 100 versions of, and she made this debut album. So.
And I think that's what you hear in the record, and like why it's like it floors you, because it just feels like, yeah, it's like a culmination of something, you know, pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yay.
Excellent album. Good recommendation.
Well done, all of us. Steven, do you want people to come find you online?
Sure. I'm Steven Inc. 1 on the old Instagram. And I think I'm Steven Inc. on, and that's Steven with a V and INK, because I'm a writer. Ha ha ha. And I think it's Steven Inc. on the Twitter. I'm a lurker on Twitter, though. I don't post, but I read everybody else's posts. And then I don't have a TikTok, and I don't have anything else fun because I don't have time. I'm sleeping, people.
Yeah, you got stuff to do, man.
That stuff is nothing.
You got dreams. You got dreams to dream, my friend.
Downtime. It's my new work. Is downtime.
Honestly, good.
I like that.
That's what we should all aim for sure. You can hang out with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You could
5 stars.
rate and review us. 5 stars on 5 stars. I really appreciate everyone who's done that so far, and thank you so much. I'm just gonna like one tiny moment of self-hype. Just bear with me. I'm so sorry. I don't do this very often. But if you're in Toronto and you're gonna be at TIFF, the documentary that I've co-written and associate produced is going to be having its world premiere. It's called
Yay!
Carry It On, Buffy St. Marie, and it is.
That's so amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited, and nervous, but pretty excited mostly. And just like it was such a like we've just been at it for so long. and it's like so many people have worked on it. And like I found out today that like I have an IMDb page. I didn't know.
No way.
I know, it's so weird. It's
that is
so
amazing.
Weird.
You're gonna be. You already are to me.
That just
you're
apparently
gonna be an indisputable like cultural light for Canada. And now that you're going to Toronto, it's actually true because you know that no culture in Canada can happen outside of
Toronto. I don't think you can rate me personally, but I don't know how it works. I just saw the page today.
I'm gonna try.
I don't know. It has no information about me, and apparently, if I want it to have information about me, I maybe have to buy a pro account.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works.
I think that's how IMDb
or you get an
works.
agent because they all have pro accounts, and then they write whatever you want on there, and
Oh, sure.
Eventually, you're going to have to get an agent, like when Hollywood comes a knocking.
From your lips to the creative person's ears. Anyway, okay, so that was my bit of self-promotion.
You didn't say what day is can they buy tickets for the premiere?
We don't have the date yet, but it's at TIFF.
Will you be wearing a beautiful gown?
I don't know about a gown, but I'm gonna try and like bring some bling. Like I'm gonna maybe wear some sequins.
Ooh. Nice.
And I'm definitely going to wear very comfortable but fun, fancy Converse.
Have you decided lip or eye yet?
I refuse.
Are you gonna go lip or eye? Lip or eye?
I think I'll probably do a strong eye because I'll probably be wearing a mask and they'll be like, oh, could you take that mask off? And I'll be like, no, I still haven't had COVID. I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you so much. So,
but you can get a sequin mask that matches your dress.
Yeah.
Say two-tone look.
You
can say. And there you go. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you to Andrea Gin for producing and co-hosting this podcast and allowing me this moment of self-indulgence. Maybe you'll edit it out. I don't know.
She's got the shears out already.
I've got the pad. Yeah.
She's got the laptop open.
Notes.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's already gone.
That's fair.
Time
That's totally fair. But thank you so much, Steven, for joining us again. It's
thank you,
always
Steven.
a delight to have you with us.
A pleasure.
It's great.
And again, it's sort of like therapy after my therapy session. It kind of works out. It's like a double hit on a Wednesday. So thanks, guys.
That's what we want.
I feel mentally healthy right now.
Wow.
In half an hour, I'm going to be a
great.
disaster. But right now, it's great.
Look, enjoy this next half hour then, friend. Thank you, everyone, for listening.